Start by introducing our first speaker, Mr. Surinder Kumar, an highlighted officer of the Indian Police Service. Mr. Surinder Kumar currently serves as the Inspector General of Police for the Crime Investigation Department of Assam. He belongs to the Indian Police Service batch of 1998 from the Assam Meghalaya cadre. He currently handles matters related to prevention and detection of crime for the state of Assam, including areas such as crime against women, which includes domestic violence, sexual harassment at workplaces, and etc. Crime against children, cybercrime, human trafficking, trafficking of drugs and narcotic substances, wildlife crime, and other organized crimes. He is designated as the nodal officer for anti-human trafficking for the state of Assam. Before joining the Indian Police Service, Mr. Kumar has had a background in banking and financial institutions. He has served as an officer in the Reserve Bank of India, Punjab National Bank, and also in the Life Insurance Corporation of India. Mr. Kumar has been decorated with several police medals, some of which include the Police Medal for Meritorious Service, the DJP Assam Commendation Medal, a gold one, and the DGP Assam Commendation Medal, a silver one, the Special Duty Medal, and the Antrik Suraksha Seva Padak. He has been awarded the Smart Policing Special Jury Award in the category of human trafficking by the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industries on the 23rd of August 2019 in New Delhi, as well as the Changemaker Award by the multinational organization of repute Save the Children on 30th September 2019 in New Delhi. Mr. Surinder Kumar is also an author. He introduced his work to the public with his book titled Role of Duty Bearers in Child Protection, which was published by the National Law University and Judicial Academy of Assam with support from the United Nations International Children's Education Fund, UNICEF. The book was formally launched by the Chief Minister of Assam on 20th of July 2019, and he has attended a number of national and international events as a speaker on human trafficking and crime against women and children. With a very warm heart, we welcome you, Surendra. So, over to you.
Teachers of Symbiosis Law School, students, esteemed panelists, and all participants of today's webinar. Good evening to all of you. It is a huge privilege for me to be speaking to such an enlightened audience. I am not an expert of law, although I have long experience of enforcing law, mostly criminal law. When we talk of child protection, it is very close to my heart. And there are very few officers who have made child protection as a passion. When we talk of child, all of you would be knowing the definition of child varies from law to law. Under POCSO Act or under Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act, child is any person who is below 18 years of age. But when we come to Child and Adolescent Labor Act, the child is below 14, and the person who has attained 14 but is below 18 is an adolescent. Again, in case of Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, a child is a person who is below 16, and a person who is between 16 to 18 is a minor. So, according to Act, the definition of child varies, and we have to keep that in mind. Child protection is a right of child. It is a right of every child to be protected from any abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And this is very important for a healthy physical, mental, and intellectual growth of the child. There are many types of crime, you would be aware, which happen with children. Child sexual abuse is one. And surprisingly, large number of cases of child sexual abuse is perpetrated by people who are known to the child. more than 90%, 95% of rape cases are committed by people who are known to the victim. Then we have child trafficking. It is a serious issue. And Northeast, Assam included, is very vulnerable from human trafficking point of view. And most of the victims, more than 2/3 of human trafficking, are from women and children. This pandemic, the ongoing pandemic, has created conditions which are very conducive for human traffickers to fish in troubled water. And we, as per our estimate, the cases of child trafficking would go up as the situation normalizes. Child labor is a big problem, not only in India, but in many parts of the country. Child marriage is also an issue which is deeply embedded in socio-cultural milieu of the society. I am particularly concerned about cybercrime taking place against children. The other types of crime are visible, are reported, not to the full extent, but to some extent. But cybercrime cases which are taking place against children mostly go unreported. During lockdown and pandemic, children are taking to digital devices more and more for learning, for entertainment, for getting connected, and for other purposes. As children spend more time on the screen, it is a very good opportunity for sexual predators, the pedophiles, to target the children. The online grooming of children and cyberbullying, these are big two challenges. A large number of children are falling victim to online grooming, and they are under the grip of the cyber criminal, and they do not report the matter to parent, teacher, guardian, or anybody. Then in India, particularly, a large number of children and also women belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe community are subjected to various forms of exploitation, including child trafficking. These marginalized and vulnerable section of community are at bigger risk of being exploited. We have sound legal frame with some of the issues. And you know, Government of India is in the process of amending major criminal law and a special law. The process is on. And I'm very hopeful that post-amendment, the legal framework would be even more sound and stringent. Police has very important role. As in most of the cases, we are the agency which comes in contact with child first time. Whether it is a case of child in conflict with law or child requiring care and protection. The first experience of the child with the government is of critical importance. If the first experience is not good, the child would not have trust, and child would not cooperate. Child would not open up and tell what the child is feeling. Wherever police has given good treatment in a child-friendly manner, the the child and family have cooperated, and this has also helped investigation and prosecution. We must remember, as police officer or any other child functionary, that investigation, prosecution, and conviction is only one side of the coin in child protection. We should also think about providing assistance and protection to the child. If child is given assistance properly, then there are chances that the child and family would come forward and give evidence and cooperate with the investigation and prosecution process. We do not provide assistance and protection to children primarily. There are other service providers. So if free legal service, free legal aid, compensation, shelter, counseling, or medical treatment is to be provided to the children or women, it has to be provided by various service providers. However, we have a very critical role as first responder to educate the child and child's family about their entitlement, about the availability of various services for the child. And we have to go one step further to link the child with these service providers. And wherever police has been able to do this, it has brought very positive change on the ground. The provisions of Juvenile Justice Act 2015 has prescribed the procedure for handling CCL and CNCP. I do not have time, neither it is within the scope of the session to discuss about the fine legal points, since most of you are related with law. I'm sure you would be knowing this. Child-friendly policing is very critical in ensuring child protection. Now, when we talk of child-friendly policing, it is just like a computer system. In a computer system, we have hardware, we have software, applications, and we also have operators. Similarly, in child-friendly policing, we have hardware, which is child-friendly corner, child-friendly structure. Then we have applications, the various legal provisions, SOPs, protocols, which prescribe how a child is to be treated. And then we have operators, the police officers who deal with the children. Unless and until we have good structure, we have good procedures, and a very sensitized officers, the child friendliness in policing would elude us. And we in Assam, and I'm sure this is happening in other states also, are very particular to ensure that the children who come to police station are given good treatment, and they are not afraid or shy of approaching government agencies. I would be very happy to share with you that the police stations building are constructed by Assam Police Housing Corporation, and child-friendly corner is part of the design, model design of police stations. So all the police stations which are coming up have child-friendly corner. You would be aware that as per the provision of Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act, Section 107, all districts should have special juvenile police unit. We have a special juvenile police unit in all districts. The SJPU, as per law, is to be headed by a minimum DSP rank officer. The SJPU has child welfare police officers who are in the rank of ASI and above from all the police stations. And over and above, there are 2 social workers associated with the Special Juvenile Police Unit. Special Juvenile Police Unit deals with all cases related to children, whether the children are in conflict with law or whether children need care and protection. We also have anti-human trafficking units, AHTU, in every district to specifically deal with cases of human trafficking, child trafficking included. These are multidisciplinary task force in a district where, along with police, NGOs, and other line departments like prosecution, health, education, social welfare, etc., are associated. When, as a first responder, we deal with a child, then we have to ensure that the child is reassured by behavior of the police and the approach of the police. There should not be any blame on the child, and there should not be any bias against the child on the basis of the community, caste, region, language group to which the child may be belonging to. In all stages of dealing with children, we have to ensure that the child is involved and the opinion of the child, the wish of the child is respected as far as possible. Along with child, the family is also to be involved. I must share that the best place for the child to develop into a healthy citizen is the family. So in all decisions of child protection, whether it is taken by police or CWC or JJB or by courts, the first priority is to see whether we can unite the child with the family. And if it does not work, only then the child can go to institutional care for a limited period of time. Because institutional care has the tendency to uproot the child from the family and society to which it belongs. It may be inevitable in many cases, but the child should be restored to the family as soon as the situation allows it. Child is also witness in many cases. When child is a victim, child is also a witness. Police should not see child, first responder should not see child as someone which can be used for extracting evidence and deposition in the court. That would be very narrow way of looking at things. The child has to be protected. The witness has to be protected because on many occasions, the perpetrators are highly placed, connected, and influential people. There are many court orders where vulnerable witness court, the provision of vulnerable witness court has been there in the court's judgment. Another important aspect I want to highlight is about the identity of the child. Whether the child is victim or an offender, the identity of the child cannot be disclosed. And if someone discloses the identity of the child, then it is an offense under Section 74 of Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act. And the identity of the child is not limited to name and address only, but it includes all other particulars like locality, name of the school, name of the village, which may give an idea about the child. There has not to be any face-to-face interaction between child and the offender, because when a child comes face-to-face with the person who has exploited the child, then the child relives his or her experience again and again. Now I would take some time to flag the challenges which law enforcement agencies are facing from my own experience. Although we have SJPU, I mean Special Juvenile Police Unit and Anti-Human Trafficking Units in all districts of Assam, these SJPU or anti-human trafficking units do not have dedicated manpower. We have taken up the matter with the government. Unless and until we have people in these units which are exclusively dealing with child-related issues, the effectiveness would be compromised. There is also issue of capacity of the police officers who are supposed to enforce law. We have sound law in India. There are multiple laws, but laws in itself do not do anything unless and until these are enforced on the ground. And before enforcing the law on ground, the police officers themselves have to be aware about the provisions which are relevant to them. And for this purpose only, I wrote the book, Role of Duty Bearers on Child Protection, which Mr. Suraj was reading some time back. We have multiple laws. So I would share with you that when we have to deal with cases of human trafficking, there are more than 10 acts. There is some disturbance. We have, so for example, when we deal with cases of human trafficking, a police officer has to refer to at least 10 acts. All provisions are scattered in different acts. We do not have consolidated law. There was a move to bring a consolidated act in parliament, but that could not see the light of the day. It is very difficult for a police officer who is too busy maintaining law and order, looking after security and other duties, to know provisions scattered across so many laws. So we require consolidated law, as we have consolidated law for narcotic, drug, and psychotropic substance. Similarly, we require consolidated law for human trafficking and for child protection. In many situations, the children become victim of crime due to regions beyond our control, socioeconomic conditions, the gender neutrality issues, developmental issues. These are not looked after by police. But the percentage of crime, the incidence of crime depends on level of literacy, poverty, development, employment, etc. So in many situations, children are sent to work as labor because family cannot afford them, maintain them. And these are some challenges where which we have to face. Sometimes role of family is also not very cooperative, particularly when the children are sent outside to earn with their consent. We also have lack of infrastructure for providing shelter and other services to children. And I believe that child protection and matter relating to children is not priority for a large number of police officers. Police officers are busy maintaining law and order, fighting insurgency, looking after security, and doing investigation. So there must be some incentive or some measure to make it a priority. But I do not say that all police officers are like that. Government is very serious, whether it is state government or central government. I also believe that there is not adequate awareness among children, among citizens, about the availability of services, the grievance redressal mechanism, and legal provisions relating to child rights and child protection. The coordination among various stakeholders and agencies responsible for child protection needs to be strengthened. There is coordination, but there is still a lot of scope for improving it. I would like to mention about one project which we are having in Assam. This may be emulated by other states. This is Shishu Mitra project. Shishu Mitra project is a partnership between Assam Police, UNICEF, and a local NGO named Utsa. During pandemic, we had a lot of interaction with children scattered across the state on digital platform. We listened to them, we reassured them of our services, and we also addressed their concerns. Some children who were stuck in Assam and belonged to outside wanted to go, and after that seminar, we were able to send them to their native states. You would be aware about one flagship scheme of Government of India, that is cybercrime prevention against women and children. Any person, any child who had experienced cybercrime can lodge complaint online on the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, www.cybercrime.gov.in. I would sum up, I would end my message for law students that in the sector of child protection, you have a lot of scope. All the NGOs who are working in the field of child protection have a legal team. The legal team looks after the legal aspect, the legal support to the victim, and also follows up the cases while it goes through investigation and prosecution. And we have interacted with a lot of brilliant legal minds in this field who are from NGOs. So I will end up now. It was a privilege talking to you. I now request you to ask questions about child protection and anything which you feel I may be in a position to answer.
Good evening, sir.
Please.
Thank you, sir, for the enriching talk. The floor is now open for some questions. I would like to call upon Hamruta, who would put forward the question to you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I'll first be presenting the questions raised by the participants from the Google form provided, followed by the questions from the chat box. Sir, how to protect the child abuse, and are there any suggestions from you which can be practiced to make the children aware of the fact that they have rights?
Please come again. I could not get the
question. Sir, how to protect the child from abuse, and are there any suggestions from you which can be practiced to make the children aware of the fact that they are provided with rights?
Yes, of course. The first part of the question is how to protect the children from abuse, and then how the children need to be made aware about the various protection available for them.
Yes, sir.
Children need to be made aware about their rights, about the modus operandi of offenders, the consequences of the crime and other aspects in families, in schools, and in society. Now, schools have a big role because children spend time in homes and in schools. That is why education department is a big stakeholder in child protection. We also should use social media and digital platforms to spread awareness on child. Children grow in families. We have to see that a child respects the child of other gender as equal partners. And this is the responsibility of parents, teachers, and society in general. Large number of cases of sexual abuse of women or children are because of the way we look at women and girls. This would take time, but I am a firm believer and optimist that if we can bring this feeling of gender neutrality, looking at other gender as equal partners, then a large number of cases of sexual abuse would come down. We always think when our girls go out that whether they would be safe, whether they would be coming without facing any harm. We should also think when our boys go out, what they are doing. Would they come home without doing anything inappropriate? So as a family, we have to think over.
Sir, I have a next question for you. Have you ever encountered any such experience where a child victim is not able to get the basic help due to lack of information and support? And especially, how do you think in the lower strata of our society can we be made aware of the crime against children and about the rights and measures available to them?
This is a very pertinent question. I've seen many cases where the child victim or survivor could not access any service for the very reason that the matter was not reported to the authorities. Unless and until the matter is reported to police or some portal or to NGO or on any helpline number, there are many ways of reporting the offense and seeking assistance. Then the legal process would not start. The ball would not be set rolling if the case is not registered, if matter is not informed. And then there is no question of providing support and assistance also if matter is not reported. So the first basic and critical precondition for the legal process to start and the assistance process to start is that the cases should be registered. And this was a huge problem during pandemic because people were unable to come out, and the people in some section of society do not have access to internet and digital platforms as we may have. Now, as a police officer or as a government or an NGO, we should not be sitting idle and waiting for the victims to come and report to us. This is not the way to do things. We have to reach out to the children, to families, to society, give them as many channels as possible to report the crime. And if we are not able to do that, then many cases would go unreported. And we should also address the concern why cases are not being reported. One of the concerns may be that even if you report, there would not be anything done against the perpetrator. Or they may be concerned about the image and prestige of the family. So we have to reassure them, tell them about legal provision. I have seen that in many cases, when the family has been told that the name of the child, the identity of the child would not be disclosed by police, by court, or any person. If they disclose, it would be offense. And this has reassured them, and many have come forward.
Sir, I have another question for you. While crime against children are increasing day by day, in spite of having a child protection system in India.
Right. The number of cases registered against women and children are going up, and more so in Assam, because if you go through the crime in India published by National Crime Record Bureau, which is the only official document on crime data, you would see that Assam has highest crime rate in the country under the head crime against women. What I mean by crime rate, I mean number of crime committed per lakh population of women. In terms of absolute number of cases reported, we are fifth in the country. But when we take into account the population and the crime committed, we are number one. Now, you must appreciate one thing, and I would like to take some time to explain it to the enlightened audience. That number of rising cases is not all negatives. It also captures some positive. I see it like this, that women are feeling confident and empowered to come out and lodge their complaints with authorities. On the other hand, we are also not allowing our police officers to burk the crime. Any case of burking the crime is taken very seriously. Non-reporting of case is a misconduct or offense, depending on the nature of the offense alleged. At the same time, we are seriously concerned with the rising number of cases of crime against women.
Sir, I have one more question. How effective is the rehabilitation of child victims in India?
I may not be the correct person to speak about the situation in other states, although I have opportunity of interacting with officers of other states, but I would like to speak about my state because I have been directly dealing. There are infrastructure, there are child care institutions, both for CCL and CNCP, but a lot needs to be done for improving the conditions of these child care institutions. These child care institutions must be engaging for the children. So they should have facilities for play, for improving their skill, and they should also prepare themselves for the life when they come out of the child care institution. It should not be the case that they should be feeling worse than what they were feeling when they were in situation of exploitation. So the adequate infrastructure with linkage to specialized services is must for child protection, and I think my state and country has done very good, but there is still a lot of scope left to improve.
Sir, this is the one last question. According to the Child Labor Amendment Act 2016, the number of hazardous activities have been reduced from 83 to 3. How is this going to impact the child rights?
What is this activity, please?
According to the Child Labor Amendment Act 2016, the number of hazardous activities have been reduced from 83 to 3. How is this going to impact child rights?
What is this activity? I have not heard this word. What is this?
Hazardous activities, like
hazardous activities. Okay. I have not seen such data. I do not know about this kind of study or observation. But I would tell you 2-3 important things about this amendment. Prior to this amendment, the name of the act was Child Labor Act, Provision and Regulation Act 1986, if I'm correct. After this amendment, the name of the law was changed. It became Child and Adolescent Labor Provision and Regulation Act 1986. And as you know, in 2017, the rules under the Act were also amended. And the amendment in the Act and rule have far-reaching consequences. Because in every district, you have district task force headed by the district magistrate, which is responsible for rescue and rehabilitation of children. Every district would have a nodal officer appointed by the DM to look after the issues of child protection. One amendment is of interesting value for police. Prior to this amendment, police was not in a position to register cases for violation of child labor law. After this amendment, police can register cases if somebody employs a child or employs an adolescent in hazardous occupation. As per Section 14, violation of Section 3 or Section 3A is a cognizable offense. However, this offense is cognizable only when it is committed by the employer and not by parent or guardian. Because in many cases, parent and guardian are helpless because of their situation, they send the child. However, I will not be in a position to comment on the data which you have quoted.
Thank you, sir, for your answers provided.
So it was a pleasure acting with such a wonderful audience. Though I could not see most of you, but I could feel it.
Sir, Suraj has one more question for you, if you can take it, sir.
Sir, good evening, and thank you for those speeches. It is brilliant hearing it from you, someone who is on the ground and doing this thing. It was actually a question posted by one of the participants. Her name is Karishma. The question is, hello, sir. As per the JJ Act, Juvenile Justice Act 2015, the Juvenile Justice Boards have the discretion to assess the maturity of child in cases of grave offences. How functional is this approach practically? Does this approach of assessment has any practical relevance?
Of course it has. You know, first I would have to tell you in brief what is the legal provision so that you can better appreciate. Most of you would be knowing, but for abundant precaution or to refresh your memory, I am repeating it. If a heinous offense is committed by a child who is 16 or above, then the Juvenile Justice Board would cause a preliminary assessment. And the definition of heinous offense is already provided in JJ Act, although no such definition is in CRPC or IPC. So any offense where minimum punishment is 7 years or more is a heinous offense. So for that matter, any rape, murder, all these cases would be heinous offense. Now, this preliminary assessment has to be done by the JJB within a period of 3 months. So the maximum time allowed is 3 months. During the preliminary assessment, the JJB would look for 3 things, 3 aspects. What is the physical and mental maturity of the child to understand the consequences of the offense? Secondly, under what circumstances the crime was committed. So the circumstances may be what was the environment in which the child was growing, what kind of company the child has, all these things. While making this assessment, the JJB may take help of experts who may be psychosocial expert, child psychologist, because JJB may not have expertise. So these experts would assist the JJB in coming out to a conclusion. After this assessment, if the board is of the opinion that the child should be tried as an adult, then the matter would be referred to the Children Court. Once the matter is referred to the Children Court, children court apply judicial mind, and it is not bound to agree with the preliminary assessment of the board. If the children court agrees with the preliminary assessment of the board, then the child would be tried as adult. If the children court does not agree with the preliminary assessment, then the children court would inquire into the matter and dispose it as if they are the JJB. I find this provision very scientific because during the preliminary assessment, the maturity level of the child, its understanding of the consequences of crime, and the circumstances are considered, and they also take help of the expert.